Today we explore the offseason of the Florida Panthers and a potential blockbuster trade that could involve goalie Sergei Bobrovsky. We'll discuss the recent reports on that information. Plus, we have lots of information on the coaching carousel, the Flyers, the Jets, the Montreal Canadiens, and others, plus some recent updates from the NHL playoffs and some more signings as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more NHL news and rumors to talk about today. First up, some updates from last night in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We saw the New York Rangers defeat the Carolina Hurricanes 4-1 to even that series up at 2 games apiece. The Carolina Hurricanes still can't seem to find a way to win on the road. They've won all their home games and lost all their road games. But to me, even the 2 games they won at home, the Rangers were in those games, and in at least one of the 2, you could argue that the Rangers were probably even the better team. So I wonder what will happen here. Theoretically, if the trend continues, maybe the Canes will win in 7 games. It's really hard to say. I know Freddie Anderson is nearing a return, but it's hard to say if it's the right move to put him in, considering how long it's been since he's played, and the fact that Antti Raanta really hasn't played that poorly. So I don't know if it's really a good time for a goalie change in that regard, but the Rangers will need to be able to steal one in Carolina at the PNC Arena to win the series. So we'll see when they play Game 5 how things go, if the trend continues or not. And the Battle of Alberta continued last night with the Oilers picking up a 5-3 win and taking a 3-1 series lead. This was a wild game that kind of had some pretty interesting swings. The Oilers came out like the Flames did early on in games 1 and 2 and scored 21 seconds in off a Jacob Markstrom gaff. Completely gave it away, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins pops it into the open cage. Got an early one before the end of the first period. It was 3-0 Oilers. Looks like they were in well control, but then the Flames managed to put up a comeback. Before we knew it, it was 3-3. And the game-tying goal was extremely weird. It was another weird one on goalie Mike Smith. The Flames were clearing the puck out of their end on a PK. Rasmus Andersson cleared the puck from his own zone. I think it was like 130, 140 feet away. And Mike Smith did not see it coming at all. And he scored from his own end. It was completely crazy and ridiculous. Hard to imagine. Mike Smith had his hands in the air like he didn't know what was going on. Looked like he was kind of, I don't know if he was blaming somebody else or what. He seems to let in these really weird goals from time to time. And another one happens here, but the Oilers, thankfully, in the past, we would have seen the Oilers kind of, really let that get to them and end up probably losing the momentum, losing the game. But no, they bounced back and ended up winning 5-3. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had another goal, arguably his best game of the playoffs as well. Draisaitl and McDavid continue to rack up the assist, which is good. So we'll see. Now the Flames are facing elimination the next time these 2 teams meet here in game number 5. Tonight's action sees the Blues trying to stave off elimination as they do battle with the Avalanche in game number 5, with the Avalanche leading that series 3-1. Now, of course, we know earlier in the series, Nazem Kadri appears to be enemy number 1 within the Blues players, and we've seen them focus so much on Kadri, in my opinion, that they've kind of lost sight of the goal here to win the hockey games. I really think that's a big part of the issue. They just seem to be so focused on taking him out and getting revenge for what they feel happened to Jordan Binnington, which I don't completely agree with. Like, it was an unfortunate collision. You can maybe place a little bit of blame on Kadri there, but to me, he collided with the defenseman that went into the goalie. I think the defenseman landing on the goalie, like I said before, was what injured him, not Kadri. But anyways, that's neither here nor there at this point. We've kind of discussed that too much already. But, in the case of Kadri, like, they're so focused on him. And then, of course, we learned that he was facing a ton of hate and getting a lot of hateful remarks, racist remarks, things targeted at him and his family through social media. I know we talked about Blues coach Craig Berube originally when asked about it, gave a no comment and wouldn't get into it at all, which to me was a bad look. And Berube did speak on this again today, claiming that he wanted to clarify his no comment from the other day, saying that he's not on social media. He was aware of a threat, but wasn't aware of anything racist involved, like any kind of racial stuff. He himself is Native American, which he said that he's dealt with this a lot himself as well, and it's not acceptable in any fashion, and there's no room for it anywhere. But it's nice to see him speak out on it. It's nice to see him take a stink against it, which is good. But he did look, I don't know, just the way he said it, it almost this didn't feel as genuine as when you kind of come out and say it on your own without kind of being prompted for it. So at least he's said something, though, which is good. It's better than saying no comment. That much we can say for sure. Now, when it comes to a few other signings here, Penguins defenseman Riikola appears to be leaving the NHL and heading to the SHL in Europe. Riikola has been with the Penguins for the last few years, hasn't really gotten a ton of opportunity, played a limited amount of games. He's a little bit more mature player in his later 20s, and he's heading back to Sweden. So obviously his time in the NHL appears to be coming to a close, and it looks like that might be the same as well for Canucks forward Alex Chaisson. Now, we don't know yet. It's not officially confirmed, but there is some speculation within Vancouver media that he is mulling an offer in Switzerland from HC Lugano. I know when Rutherford was asked about it, he said they hadn't made a decision yet on what they were going to offer, if anything, to Chaisson on a contract. So we don't know for sure. I guess if Chaisson can get an NHL offer, maybe he'll stick around. But he has bounced around a lot in the last number of years. I mean, he's obviously started in Dallas, went to Ottawa, went to Calgary. He's played in Edmonton. He's played in Vancouver, played in Washington. He's really been around a lot. He never seems to stick anywhere as more than 1 to 2 years. So I kind of wonder if his NHL run is kind of coming to a close here. I don't know if he'd get an offer somewhere. So he didn't have really a great year in Vancouver, so it's difficult to say. But he may be heading overseas as well. We'll wait to confirm that. And the Columbus Blue Jackets as well have signed a prospect, a 24-year-old right-shot Swedish defenseman, Marcus Bjork, who is on a 1-year ELC coming over from Sweden. Now, one significant injury that happened early in the playoffs, so we really weren't given a lot of details on, did get more revealed here today. We found out that Capitals forward Tom Wilson is going to be out of action for 6 to 8 months. All we really were told during that series with the Panthers and the Capitals was that from each game he wasn't going to play. At one point, I think we had heard he was definitely not going to be back for the rest of the series, but it was a torn ACL is what happened to Wilson. So he's having knee surgery, and it's a big recovery. So at this point, it's quite likely that he will not obviously be in training camp and will miss the beginning of next season. Depending on the recovery of 6 to 8 months, that puts us somewhere between November and January. So not only will he miss training camp, but it's quite possible he could miss anywhere from a month and a half of next season all the way up to almost half the season. It just kind of depends, and that's a big range of 2 months. A lot of games can take place in that time frame, so we'll see. Now, on the coaching carousel, lots of updates here today. Darren Dreger's reporting from TSN that even though Montreal has been quiet and tight-lipped about the situation, he is fully expecting a contract to be announced in the very near future for interim head coach, soon to be permanent head coach Martin St. Louis. So obviously we kind of left the Canadians at the end of their season with the assumption that he would be back. We've heard nothing to the contrary. I think it's just a matter of them focusing on getting the fine details of the contract worked out. Obviously lots to be done there, and obviously at this point it sounds like it's getting close, but Montreal hasn't said a word, but Dreger thinks it's going to be done very quickly. Certainly as well in Philadelphia, we know that they were reportedly wanting to talk to Barry Trotz. I believe it was like a phone interview, expected to have a face-to-face. We did hear about John Tortorella, which was confirmed by Kevin Weeks, and Tortorella even made a comment as well. Didn't really say a whole lot, but he did confirm that he had an opportunity. So certainly that is definitely truth, and we know that that's been verified. I know Elliot Friedman on their new 32 Thoughts podcast today mentions as well, besides Tortorella, that Rick Tocchet might be another name to watch for, which I've actually mentioned as well before, wondering, just speculation on my part, being a former Flyer alumni, is what they're looking for in a coach, if he might be considered. But Friedman also mentioned that he believes like guys like Bobby Clark and the upper brass of the Flyers seem to be pretty high on a guy like Tortorella being the next coach. Obviously a guy who can, do well with the defensive system, be still a very, demanding coach, results-oriented coach. Say what you want about Torts. He does tend to get results, but obviously he's a little bit of a unique style compared to some of the other guys out there. Another few names have been mentioned as well when it comes to Vegas. They said on the 32 Thoughts podcast that Vegas is not only expected to talk to Barry Trotz, but they're expected to talk to Rick Tocchet as well, like the Flyers, as well as Paul Maurice. So obviously Maurice might be considering making a return to coaching in Winnipeg. We know that they spoke to Barry Trotz, and it's believed that he's, it's his job to turn down, essentially, is what we're led to believe so far. And it's believed that the Jets also plan to speak with Kirk Muller. At least that's what Friedman believes, that Muller is going to be talking to a few teams. Obviously, he's been a head coach in the past. He's been a long-time NHL assistant coach. Has tons of experience. Highly regarded as a very smart coach. And, there's a possibility here, especially with the resurgence we saw in the Flames regular season this year, because he's obviously on Daryl Sutter's staff. So that obviously won't really happen until the Flames are done in the playoffs here, whenever that time comes for them. So Muller will be mentioned here in the coaching rumor carousel as vacancies start to have interviews and things to get these jobs filled. He'll be in the mix on a few different occasions. We also got word to the Toronto Maple Leafs have made a few front office staffs, not really names that are so much known publicly that they really get the media attention, but apparently a couple of guys that are no longer with the Leafs include former Senior Director of Player Evaluation Jim Palafido and Hockey Research and Development Analyst Cam Charron. So they're no longer with the Maple Leafs. Wasn't really clear if they were let go or if they left on their own accord. Based on how it sounds, it was just announced that they're no longer with the club. So I'm assuming that they probably were let go, but hard to say just the way the wording was there. Now let's look at the postmortem here of the Florida Panthers. All kinds of talk out of this team now that they're officially eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it's not so much even that they lost, it's how they lost. I mean, the fact that they had such an amazing regular season, one of the top scoring teams in the cap era, the best team since 1996 for the Florida Panthers. I mean, you could argue that they're probably even better, but that 96 Cup run, Cup final run of the Panthers, playoff-wise and going further-wise, is still the best team in franchise history. But like I said, in most other ways, this team was way deeper, way stronger, and I really thought they had more opportunity. And now that they're out and said they lost the way they did to kind of what we refer to as Big Brother in Tampa, that state rivalry didn't really turn into much. Like, Tampa handled them relatively easy. Last year's playoff series to me was more intense. And it was a closer situation, like closer competition than it was now, which is kind of odd considering this team is so much better, at least it looked to be. But a few things to keep in mind here. One, Jumbo Joe Thornton, of course, longtime NHL veteran. He was asked today, because some of these guys did speak to the media today after their season's now over. Thornton does say that no decision has been made yet on his future. There are many that believe that his time very well could be up in the NHL. Joe is a player who's had a tremendous career, but definitely been seeing a bit of a decline in recent years. And this year in Florida, he was not a regular through the regular season, and he only appeared in one playoff game, and that was their final game before getting eliminated. So, if he can't crack the lineup and even be a regular anymore, I think the odds are that the time has come. Now, at one point, Joe Thornton did say that he, at the end of his NHL career, would like to consider going over to play in Switzerland for 1 or 2 seasons. That's where he met his wife. So his wife is from there, and considered going there with their children to live for a year or two to give them the full experience of growing up where their mother was from. Obviously, many years ago, I believe it was during the lockout year, Thornton played over there, and I believe that's when and where they met anyway. So we'll see if that comes to be. Even if his career does come to a close in the NHL, he very well still may play over there for at least 1 year. But like I said, it's been a long time since he said that, so it's difficult to say if that's still the case or not. When it comes to Claude Giroux, he was asked point blank about his future and if he could see himself staying, and he said absolutely yes. I believe he even made a comment to the fact of the organization has been waiting his career to kind of see so much dedication to winning and all that. So he had a lot of great things to say, and certainly seemed very interested in returning. And to be honest, I would not expect him to say anything else. And I have no doubt that there would be interest on his part, and I think there will likely be interest on Florida's part to bring him back. They did pay a decent price tag to pick him up, but at the same time, the Florida Panthers are going to have some real serious cap crunch here coming up, and I don't know if they're going to be able to afford him. I know on the 32 Thoughts podcast today, Friedman kind of referred to Giroux. He said that there's likely interest, sure, but he says he views Giroux as a luxury that they just might not be able to afford, depending on how cheap he's willing to sign. Will we see Giroux do something similar like we've seen Jason Spezza and Mark Giordano do in Toronto? I don't know. I mean, he's not quite to their age. He's younger, and certainly, not that they're not productive, but, like he's at a different stage of his career. I don't think he's quite at the twilight like they are in their later 30s, so I don't really see that being the case. Now, he might take a little bit less money to play in Florida than he would, say, in Ottawa or another market because of the tax differences and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of speculation he wants to play at home in Ottawa, but that may not be, a time perfectly matched out just yet. We don't know that. And maybe it's something he wants to do a little bit further into the future. Like, it's hard to really say. But there's definitely interest. It's just going to be proven tough to do, I think, and we'll see what happens there. Of course, the other big thing to look out for Florida this year is likely going to be coming is the Jonathan Huberdeau extension, assuming they get that done. But that's going to be another big ticket this year. We get the Barkov contract kicks in. He goes to $10 million. Carter Verhaeghe's extension kicks in. He goes to, $4.5 to $5 million. He's going up to like a couple big raises. So you have a lot of big tickets here, and you're about to add another one in Huberdeau. You got to wonder, with the way they lost and where their cap is at, do they bring everything back? I know there's probably going to at least be some minor tinkering, but you have to wonder what the Panthers and what the reaction is going to be. I don't think they absolutely have to do anything too significant. They had an awesome season. They just need to find another gear and add that will to win like we see in Tampa. But it's going to prove to bring back this full group. The other problem, too, that they're going to run into is they gave up a ton of assets in making trades this year to add at the deadline, which was fine. I mean, understandably, considering how strong of a season they had, they wanted to shoot their shot this year and really go for it. And they don't have a first-round pick now for the next 3 seasons. So making additional trades in the next year or two while this window is open for them to be highly competitive and possibly make be a cup contender, it's going to be proven difficult to be able to add at the deadline. So what they go into the season with might have to be what they kind of stick with. It's not going to be easy. That much is for sure. So we'll see what happens. But the Huberdeau extension is going to be a big piece of business for them, and it's going to be another big ticket, which is going to tighten things up. I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as saying that they would trade something like Huberdeau. He's been so valuable to them. I just, I can't see that being the case. But the other big, what I thought to be a fairly good bombshell here from Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast today was talking about goalie Sergei Bobrovsky. Now, this is not really shocking information, but it's a big deal. He says how in the last year, he believes the Florida Panthers tried really hard to trade Bobrovsky, and he feels they will continue to try to do that likely this offseason. I mean, this guy's making $10 million and has a no-move clause. That's not going to be an easy piece of business to take care of. I'm sure that Bill Zito is looking at the previous regime going, why did you sign a $10 million goaltender? I mean, clearly we saw Price get that, and nobody thought it would happen again, considering just how bad it ties up your salary cap, and most goalies just are not worth that. I mean, Vasilevsky's making 9 and change, and, obviously look what he's doing. So one of the few exceptions to the rule here, but, Bobrovsky's time in Florida in 3 years now is not really been the absolute best. I'll show you the contract here, what he's got left via capfriendly.com. No move clause. There's lots of signing bonuses, but there's a lot of money left there. He still has 4 years left, right? So certainly that's a lot of dough. I mean, the Panthers would probably have to eat a significant portion of that salary. You can go as much as 50%. I don't know if they would want to go that far. That means they'd still have $5 million on the cap. They probably prefer to go less than that, so that maybe they only have 3 or 4. But if they're going to trade Bobrovsky, and if they can get the deal done, they're not going to have any other choice but to eat some of the salary. But the problem is he would completely control where he goes because he has a no-move clause. And I was looking around the NHL going, okay, if they were able to successfully pull this off, where could Bobrovsky go? We know when he left Columbus, there was a lot of rumors about where he could end up between him and Panarin, both leaving the Jackets. There was talk that they wanted a certain lifestyle, and they wanted to go in certain markets, and they wanted a big market. So obviously Panarin ended up in Florida. There was a talk between warm weather and big markets and all different things like that came up a lot in conversation. Certainly the New York area teams were in the running. The Islanders and Rangers were apparently right down to the wire, and there was a point where it was close that Bobrovsky and Panarin were going to be going to the same team. and I believe to be was Florida, but it didn't work out that way. Obviously, they went their separate ways and got separate contracts, but still, like, where would Bobrovsky agree to be traded to? He's living in Florida, so for one, the tax advantage is good. You get the weather advantage, living basically probably like, around, being on access to like a beach and all the time, like the lifestyle down there. Watching the guys in Florida down there, it's a little bit envious. Same thing about the ones in California. Like it's, except you get in Florida, you get the weather and the tax advantage. Like, it's pretty crazy. I don't know what Bobrovsky would do if Panthers management say, listen, we want to trade you. Where are you going to go? Like, I don't know what he would accept. He could be playing hardball with them and really see what happens. I mean, a buyout would be insanely expensive. With 4 years left, they'd be making payments on that contract and counting against their cap for another 8 years because it's half their 2/3 of the money over twice the period of time. So that wouldn't be likely. The only teams that would really have the need for a goalie and have some decent amount of space, like they'd have to have a significant portion of salary eaten up by Florida. So I don't know. It was not going to be easy. That is a given. But if you look around the league, where could Bobrovsky go? Like, would he want to go to Arizona, Seattle, New Jersey? Like, probably not. Like, he didn't. Friedman didn't link him to any specific teams, but hard to wonder what they could do in that regard. But I'm not shocked to find out that they're certainly not overly fond of the contract, and they would love to be able to move on from it and probably give a bigger role and more games to Spencer Knight, who's waiting in the wings. So let me know your thoughts. Could the Panthers trade Bobrovsky? Where could he actually go? He certainly has a lot of control. Is it likely? I'm not so sure. It's going to be certainly tough to pull off, but we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.